In a recent decision that has stirred debate over government transparency, Montana Governor Greg Gianforte vetoed House Bill 271, legislation intended to limit the use of executive privilege in denying public records requests. Amanda Eggert with the Montana Free Press recently wrote an article about the bill, and she joins me now. Thanks so much for joining me, Amanda.
Thank you for having me on.
All right, first question we got for you. What were the primary objectives to House Bill 271, and how did it aim to enhance transparency in the governor's decision-making process?
House Bill 271 was drafted in response to a Montana Supreme Court ruling finding that there is a measure of, quote, executive privilege in government deliberations. And that ruling essentially said that the governor has the ability to limit public access to some public records in the interest of having candid debate with his executive agencies. So when Representative Ed Staffman drafted this legislation, he was trying to re-expand the public's right to know and to reopen access to records that might be unavailable following this Montana Supreme Court ruling.
Okay. And then how did Governor Greg Gianforte justify his veto to House Bill 271, particularly in relation to the Montana Constitution and recent Montana Supreme Court rulings?
Yeah, his veto letter was really interesting. It started by acknowledging that Montana has one of the strongest right to know provisions in its constitution among all of the United States. And he recognized that, but then he went on to say that there is this common law expectation of an executive privilege so that agencies of the state government can debate freely and candidly when they're talking about public policies. His argument had two tacks. He said that there's this expectation that there's an executive privilege that will lead to better policy among executive branch agencies. And he also said that that it will lead to better outcomes in terms of the public policy positions that the state government arrives at.
Perfect. Last question we got for you. What are the potential implications of the governor's veto on public access to executive branch records and the broader principle of governmental transparency in Montana?
I think a lot of people are very curious about that, right? Because under this ruling that the Montana Supreme Court issued, it will be harder for non-governmental organizations and for individual Montanans to access records that the state does not want them to see. There is still a provision in that ruling saying if you think that you've got a strong claim to see documents, that you can ask a court to review them and then to release some of them for your review. But that takes a lot of time. So I think that the public's access to documents will be somewhat limited, and it might take a court order to get to them.
Okay. Anything else you'd like to mention?
Yeah, I would like to add that this measure did not pass with two-thirds of lawmakers in approval. So that means that there will be no opportunity for lawmakers to override this veto.
Perfect. Thanks so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on.